Hello everyone, welcome to Best Solutions English classes. This is Pratibha Anand, your English teacher. Today I am going to start a new chapter, The Adventures of an Understudy. And this chapter, or you can say this story, is taken from the novel The Prisoner of Zenda, and it is written by Sir Anthony Hope Hawkins. The Adventures of an Understudy. This story is written by Sir Anthony Hope Hawkins. So, firstly, we will discuss about the author of this story, Sir Anthony Hope Hawkins. Sir Anthony Hope Hawkins is better known as Anthony Hope, and he was an English novelist and playwright. He was a prolific writer. Prolific means producing a lot, means he wrote a number of novels and books in English, especially of adventure novels. But he is remembered predominantly for only two books, The Prisoner of Zenda and the sequel, Rupert of Henzau. And sequel meaning is the next part of any book or any movie. Firstly, we should know the meaning of the word understudy. Understudy means an actor who takes on a particular role in a play if the usual actor is absent. In easy language, you can say duplicate of any actor. Now we will see the theme of this story. Rasendal. Rasendal is the main character of this story who played the role of King Rudolf. So Rasendal is traveling from England to Ruritania to see the coronation of King Rudolf. Means Rasendal was going to see the coronation. Coronation means ceremony at which someone is officially crowned king or queen. Means वो ceremony जिसमें किसी को आधिकारिक तौर पे राजा या रानी घोषित किया जाता है. उस सेरेमनी को देखने रसेंडल जा रहा था इंग्लैंड से रूरिटेनिया. A chance meeting in the woods brings Rasendal and Rudolph face to face, and they discover that they look exactly alike. And by chance, King Rudolph met with Rasendal in the forest. And that time they came to know, they discovered that they are exactly same to same. Means they are totally same in their appearance. Even their hair is the same shade of brilliant red, the color of Rudolph's royal Elfberg family. Even their hair shade was also same, and Rasendal's hair color was same as the color of Rudolph's royal Elfberg family. The next day, Rudolph is found unconscious and unable to attend his coronation. And next day, Rudolph is found unconscious, means he was not in his senses, and unable to attend his coronation, means he was not able to attend but his coronation. But the show must go on, or else the king's half-brother and enemy, Black Michael, the Duke of Istrishu, will take over the throne. But the coronation ceremony should not be stopped. Otherwise, the enemy and king's half-brother, whose name was Black Michael, and he was the king of Istrishu, he will take over the throne of King Rudolph. In absence of king, he will take over the throne. And for the sake of Ruritanian people, Rasendal must pretend to be Rudolph for the day and take part in the coronation. And for the favor of Ruritanian people, Rasendal will have to play the role of Rudolph for a day, and he will have to take the part in coronation also. The king's friends Colonel Sept and Fritz von Terlenheim promise to help. But will Rasendal manage to deceive Black Michael and Princess Flavia, the woman who Rudolph is engaged to marry? Read on to find out. Means after unconsciousness of King Rudolph, his best friends Colonel Sept and Fritz decided that the show must go on. Means the coronation ceremony should not be stopped. And Rasendal, who was the copy of King Rudolph, he will play the role of King Rudolph in that coronation ceremony. They decided and they said that they will help by all means to Rasendal. by which he could manage all that things in coronation ceremony. But will Rasandal manage to deceive Black Michael and Princess Flavia? Princess Flavia was the lady to whom King Rudolf was going to marry. And what will happen next? So we will find out in this chapter. Now see para 1. The game had begun. The cool morning air streaming in through the window of the train cleared my head, and I was able to take in all Sept said to me. He was wonderful. Means Rasendal is explaining here that the game had started. Means he had started the role of King Rudolph, and the cool morning air which was coming through the window of train, that cleared his head, Rasendal's head, and he was able to take in all Sept said to me, and he was able to follow all that whatever Sept said to him. He was wonderful. Now, this thing Rasendal is telling that Sept was wonderful. He began at once to instruct me in the history of my past life, of my family, of my taste, pursuits, weaknesses, friends, companions, and servants. Means Sept explained every aspects of Rudolph's life, about his past life, his family, his taste, pursuits, weaknesses, friends, companions, and servants. He told me the etiquettes of Ruritarian court and promised to be constantly at my elbow to point out everybody whom I ought to know. Now, Rasindal is telling that Sept told every etiquettes of Ruritarian royal family, and he promised to Rasindal that he will be constantly with Rasindal at my elbow to point. Means he will be very near to Rasindal. Means he will be near to Rasindal at those points where Rasindal ought to know about any person. At 9:30, looking out of the window, I saw the towers of a great city, your capital, my liege, grinned old Sept with a wave of his hand. Means at 9:30, when Rasindal was looking out of the window, he saw the towers of a great city, and that great city was Ruritania. Your capital, my liege. My liege means respectful manner of addressing the king. Here, Sept jokingly calls Rasindal his liege. So, grinned old Sept with a wave of his hand means old Sept gave a broad smile to Rasindal, and he was waving his hand. And Sept said to Rasindal that this is your capital, my liege. He laid his finger on my pulse a little too quick, said he in his grumbling tone. Now, Rasindal is explaining here that Sept has kept his fingers on his pulse, on Rasindal's pulse, and said in his grumbling tone. Grumbling means a loud, low, dull, continuous noise. हिंदी में आप जिसे कहते हैं बड़बड़ाना, तो बड़बड़ाते हुए कहा सेप्ट ने रसेंडल से a little too quick means रसेंडल्स पल्स, जो रसेंडल की पल्स थी वो कुछ तेज चल रही थी, धड़क रही थी. I am not made of stone, I exclaimed. Now Rasindal said to Sept that he is not made of stone. You will do, said he with a nod. Now Sept said to Rasindal that you can do it. Then he paused and looking at us said quietly, God send we may be alive tonight. And after that Sept paused for a while and he looked towards Fritz and Rasindal, and he said, means Sept said to them that God sent, means God sent to you for our help, and perhaps we may be alive tonight. Amen, said Fritz. Now Fritz said Amen at this statement. Para 6. The train stopped. Fritz and Sept leaped out and held the door for me. Means the train stopped at the station. Fritz and Sept, both friends, stepped out of the station, and they both held the door for Rasindal to show his respect towards Rassendyll. I choked down a lump that rose in my throat. Means his throat was totally choked down. Means it is the symbol of his nervousness. Then I settled my helmet firmly on my head and breathed a short prayer to God. And after that, he settled his helmet. Helmet means a kind of crown. He settled his crown firmly on his head and breathed a short prayer to God, and he recited a short prayer to God. The last thing I did was to feel if my revolver was handy and sword loose in the scabbard. And after that, Rassendyll is telling here that he checked his revolver, that was it handy or not, and he checked his sword, that it is that sword was loose in his scabbard or not. Scabbard means metal or leather cover for the blade of a sword. So he checked both things for his protection. Then I stepped out on to the platform of the station at Station, and after checking all that things, he came out on the platform of the station. The bells throughout the city broke out into a joyful peal. Means when Rassendyll came out of the station as King Rudolf, the whole city was filled with the sound of bells. The sound of a military band and of men cheering struck my ear. Means the sound of military band and the people were cheering to him. King Rudolf V was in his good city of Station, and they shouted outside, "God save the king." Means the people was so happy and excited that they were shouted that our King Rudolf V is in our good city of Station, and God save the king. Means they were praying for King Rudolf that God save him. Old Sept's mouth wrinkled into a smile. God save them both, he whispered. Means after listening the shout of the people that God save the king, old Sept smiled with wrinkled mouth, and he whispered, he spoke in a very low manner that God save them both. Here them is used for Rudolf and Rassendyll both, because Rudolf was unconscious and Rassendyll was playing his part. And after that, Sept said to Rassendyll, "Courage, lad," and I felt his hand press my arm. Means he said to Rassendyll that you keep courage, man, and Rassendyll felt that old Sept pressed his arm. A group of officers stood awaiting me. At their head was a tall old man covered with medals and in a military uniform. Now, when they reached outside of the station, a group of officers came there to receive them, came there to receive King Rudolf. And their head, means their in charge, was a tall old man, and his dress, military uniform, was covered with medals. Marshal Strakenj whispered Sept, and I knew that I was in the presence of the most famous veteran of the Ruritanian army. Master Strakenj was the in charge of those officers, and he whispered to Sept, and Rassendyll knew this fact that he was in the presence of the most famous veteran. Veteran means the senior army person in the army. So he stood in front of the most famous veteran of Ruritanian army. The marshal saluted me in a few loyal words. I accepted his greeting very suavely and received the compliments of a large number of distinguished guests. Means marshal saluted to King Rudolf. Rassendyll was in the get-up of King Rudolf, so he saluted to Rassendyll, but Rassendyll was in the get-up of King Rudolf. I accepted his greeting. Now Rassendyll is telling here that he accepted Marshal's greeting very suavely. Suavely means in a way that is confident and elegant but not sincere, because Rassendyll was trying to show himself as King Rudolf. And after that he received the compliments of a number of distinguished guests. means he received the compliments from number of guests. No one revealed the least suspicion, and no one had any kind of doubt that King Rudolf was not present there, any other person was playing his role, so no one had this kind of doubt. So I felt my nerve returning and the troubled beating of my heart subsiding. So after watching all that things, Rosendal felt that his nerve was returning back, and the troubled beating of his heart, means before that his heart was trembling, but after watching all that normal things, his heart beating were being subsiding means becoming slower. Presently I mounted my horse and started to ride through the streets with the marshal on my right and Sept on my left. Here Rasendal is mentioning that after that welcome, he rode on his horse as King Rudolf, and he started to move towards his palace through the streets, and where one side of his horse Marshal was there, and Sept was in his left side. The scene was brilliant as we rode slowly to where the royal palace stood. Means when they were moving towards the royal palace, the streets were decorated. The scene was brilliant as we rode slowly to where the royal palace stood. Every house was hung with red and decorated with flags. The streets were lined with raised seats on each side. Means when they were moving towards the palace, where the palace situated, the streets were so nicely decorated that the scene was looking very brilliant, and red and decorated flags were hung on every house, and the streets were also decorated. I passed along bowing this way and that under a shower of cheers, blessings, and waving handkerchiefs. Means when Rasendal was passing through those streets, the people who were present there, they were cheering him, they were giving their blessings and waving their handkerchiefs in his honor, and Rasendal was bowing his head in their respect this way and that way. The balconies were full of brightly dressed ladies, and the balconies of the houses were full of brightly dressed women who clapped their hands and curtsied, and who were showing their happiness by clapping their hands, and by they were showing their courtesy towards their king. A torrent of red roses fell on me, and someone threw red roses on Rasendal. One bloom lodged in my horse's mane, and I took it and stuck it in my coat. The marshal smiled grimly. The red rose for the elf bucks, marshal, said I gaily, and he nodded. Means someone threw red roses on Rasendal, and one flower settled in his horse's mane, and he took it and stuck it into his coat. And on his in this activity, marshal smiled grimly. ग्रिमली मीन्स अनमने मन से मुस्कुराना, तो मार्शल जो था वो अनमने ढंग से मुस्कुराया. एंड एट दैट एक्टिविटी रसेंडल सेड टू मार्शल cheerfully that the red rose is for Elfbuck family, and he nodded, and Marshall agreed. I have written gaily, and a strange word it must seem. Means here author says that he used the word gaily. Gaily means cheerfully, but it sounds very strange because he was happy but he was very nervous. He was feeling nervous. But the truth is that I was giddy with excitement. At that moment I almost believed that I was in very truth the king. Means Rasendal was giddy, means shaky because of extreme excitement and energy. At that moment Rasendal believed that he was the real king. He was so much filled with confidence that now he believed that he was the real king, he was the true king. Well, we went by, and then the marshal, turning round on his saddle, waved his hand. Means when they were moving forward, Suddenly, Marshal turned back and he showed some gesture to his soldiers. He waved his hand. The soldiers closed round us so that the crowd could not come near to me. Means Marshal waved his hand and he showed some gesture to his soldiers, and the soldiers came very near to Rasendel so that the crowd could not reach up to Rasendel. We were leaving my quarter of the city and entering Duke Michael's. Here, Black Michael of statue was a hope, a hero, and a darling. Now they were leaving the quarter of King Rudolf, and they were leaving the city also, and they were now entering in Duke Michael's region. And that at that place, Black Michael of statue was the hero and darling of
Action
his
of the
people. Marshals showed me more clearly than words what the state of feeling in the town must be. Now, this action of Marshall's gesture, Marshall's order, showed everything, means cleared everything in front of Rasindal, that the people of that region, Black Michael's region, were not too much faithful towards King Rudolph. But if fate made me a king, the least I could do was to play the part handsomely. But if the destiny made Rasendal a king, now he will play the role of King Rudolph very perfectly. Now he decided this thing, that he will play the role of King Rudolph very perfectly. Why this change in our order, Marshal, said I. Now Rasendal asked to Marshal that why had you done all these changes in our order. It is more prudent, sir, he murmured. Now Marshal replied that it is more prudent. Prudent means sensible, and careful means we are going through those areas that is much more sensible, and we should be careful at that place. Stopped the horse, let those in front ride on, said I, till they are 50 yards ahead. But you, Colonel Sept, and my friends, wait here till I have ridden 50 yards and see that no one is nearer to me. I will have my people see that their king trusts them. Now Rasindal stopped his horse and he ordered to soldiers that they will be in front at 50 yards ahead from him, and Colonel Sept and his other friends, they will wait at that point until he had not reached 50 yards away from them, and no one should be nearer to him, means no one will be able to come near to Rasendal. Means Rasendal wanted to show to the people of statue that their king trusts them, their king believes on them. Sept laid his hand on my arm. I shook him off. The marshal hesitated. Means Sept tried to stop to Rasendal, but he denied. The marshal was hesitating to follow all that order. Am I not understood? Said I, and the marshal gave the orders. Again, Rasindal said that, are you not cleared about my order? And after that, marshal gave the orders. I saw old Sept smiling into his beard. Now Rasindal saw that Sept was smiling into his beard, but he shook his head at me. But he agreed with Rasindal. If I had been killed in open day in the streets of Statue, Sept's position would have been a difficult one. Now Rasindal was thinking that if he had been killed in open day in the streets of Statue, so Sept will get into the problem. Means he will have to face a big problem there. So I, riding alone, entered this barely decorated part of town. It was more interesting, for I heard the comments of the crowd. Now Rasendal decided, and he entered that barely decorated part of the town alone. And it was more interesting for him that now he was able to hear the comments of the crowd. If he is red, he is right, cried an old woman. Suddenly, an old woman cried that if his hair is red in color, so he is right. I laughed and took off my helmet so that she might see that I was of the right color, and the crowd cheered me at that. So, when he heard this comment, so he took off his crown. Rasindal took off his crown so that that lady can see that he was the right person, because his hair was red in color, and the crowd cheered him at this activity. He looks paler than usual, said one. Means another person passed a comment that Rasindal was looking yellowish and weak. He's a bigger man than I thought, said another. And another person said that Rasindal was looking much bigger than he thought. So he had a good jaw under that beard, after all, commented a third. And a third person passed a comment that he had a good jaw under that beard. The pictures of him aren't handsome enough, declared a pretty girl. Now, a pretty girl commented on Rasendal, who was playing the part of King Rudolf, that she found him more handsome than she had seen in pictures. Means, in reality, he was handsome enough, but he was not very much handsome in his pictures. But in spite of these signs of approval and interest, the mass of the people received me in silence and with sullen looks. Now here Rasendal is mentioning that in spite of these signs of approval, means people commented, some commented in a very positive manner and some are in a negative sense. But all these signs of approval and interest, the mass of the people, means number of people received him in silence. Means they have not showed any significant thing on his behavior. With sullen looks, means with silence and anger, means they were looking towards Rudolf, who was actually Rasindal, in silence and anger, because they supported Michael and not Rudolf. At last we were at the church, and for the first time the sudden sense of my audacity almost overcame me. Now Rasendal is telling about his situation here, that at last they were at the church where their coronation ceremony was going to be held, and for the first time he felt a sudden sense of my audacity almost overcame me. The meaning of this phrase is he suddenly realized what a huge risk he had taken. Means कितना बड़ा उसने खतरा मोल लिया था. And fear overtook all other feeling in his mind, and the fear factor came in his mind that how much huge risk he had taken. Everything was in a mist as I dismounted. Means when he came down from his horse, everything was in a mist. In a mist means everything looked blurry and unclear, because now he was nervous. I saw the marshal and slept dimly, and just because of his blurry look, he saw the marshal and slept dimly. Dimly means without paying too much attention, because he was nervous. So, with just because of nervousness, he saw marshal and slept dimly. And dimly the group of gorgeously robed priests who awaited me. And after that, with nervousness, he saw the group of gorgeously robed priests. Gorgeously means beautifully dressed priest. Priest means the people who came to perform religious ceremony for coronation. And my eyes were still dim as I walked up the aisle. Means his eyes was, Rasendal's eyes was still very dim. Means he was not very clear in his look when he moved towards the aisle. Aisle means the passage between of the two rows of seats. I saw nothing of the crowd that filled the church. Only two faces stood out side by side clearly before my eyes. The face of a girl, pale and lovely, and the face of a man whose red cheeks, black hair, and dark deep eyes told me that at last I was in the presence of my brother Black Michael. Here Rasendal is mentioning his condition that just because of the nervousness, he saw nothing in between of that crowd. Means he saw no one there who were present there in the crowd in the church. Only two faces who were stood just in front of him, means who were just before his eyes. He saw only those two faces, and in between of those two faces, there was one face of a girl whose face was pale and lovely, and the other face was of a man whose red cheeks, black hair, and the dark deep eyes told him that he was finally in front of the his half brother Black Michael. And when he saw me, his red cheeks went pale all in a moment, and his helmet fell with a clatter on the floor. Means when Black Michael saw Rudolph in front of him, he became shocked. His cheeks went pale in a moment. I think just because of the reality that he was involved in unconsciousness of King Rudolph. So when he saw that he is healthy and he is present here, so he became shocked, and his helmet, his crown, fell with a clatter on the floor, fell with a sound on the floor. Till that moment, he had not realized that the king had indeed come to statue. Means till that moment, Black Michael did not realize that the King Rudolph came there and came to statue. Means he was involved in that conspiracy of unconsciousness. So I think he was not able to believe on this reality that the finally king reached there, and he came to statue. Of what followed next, I remember nothing. Now, here Rasindal is mentioning his condition that what should be followed next, he forgot everything. He had nothing in his mind that what he had to do next. I knelt before the priest as he anointed my head. Anointed means put oil as part of a ceremony. So here Rasendal is mentioning that he sat on his knees just in front of priest, and he anointed oil, means he put oil on his head. Then I rose to my feet, took from him the crown of Ruritania and set it on my head. And after that ceremony, he stood up and he took the crown from priest, and he kept that crown on his head, and the crown of Ruritania he kept on his head. I swore the old oath of the king, and after that he took the pledge of old pledge of the king of Ruritania. Then the lady with the pale face stepped from her place and came to where I stood, and an attendant cried, Her Royal Highness the Princess Flavia. Means after that, the lady whose face was yellowish, she moved forward towards that place where King Rudolph stood, and an attendant shouted, he announced, Her Royal Highness the Princess Flavia. Means the lady, she was Princess Flavia. Flavia put her hand in mine and curtsied low. Now Flavia put her hand in King Rudolph's hand and curtsied, means showed curtsy towards him. And then came the Duke of Statue. Means after that, Duke of Statue means Black Michael came there. His step trembled, and his steps were trembling. I swear, and he looked to the right and to the left as a man looks who thinks on flight. Means Rasendal saw that Black Michael was watching here and there because he was feeling nervous, and it was looking just like who think on flight. The meaning of this phrase is who looks like he wants to run away so that he does not have to deal with some unpleasantness. Means he did not, Black Michael did not want to stay there. He wanted to leave that place immediately. His face was patched with red and white, his hand shook, and I felt his lips dry and parched as he kissed my hand. Means Black Michael's face was patched, means there was patches on his face, and that patches were in red and white color. His hand shook, means his hand was not constant, that was shaky. And Rasendel felt that Michael's lips was dry and hot when he kissed on his hand. Resolutely doing my duty, I took my dear Michael by both hands and kissed him on the cheek. I think we were both glad when that was over. And after that, Rasendal resolutely, means in a very determined manner, he did his duty. And what was the duty? He took his dear Michael, his brother Michael, by both hands and kissed him on his cheek. And after that, he thought that they both were happy when that coronation ceremony was over. But neither in the face of the princess nor anyone else did I see the least doubt or questioning. Means Rasendal did not see any doubt or any type of questioning on anyone's face. Neither Princess Flavia nor anyone else. Means no one had any kind of doubt that King Rudolf, actually the real king, was not there and anyone else is playing his role. But neither she nor anyone else dreamed or imagined that I could be other than the king. Means no one had any kind of doubt. They even did not imagine that anyone else is playing the role of the king, and real King Rudolph was not there. So for an hour I stood there, and after that Rasindal stood there for an hour as though I had been a king all my life. Everybody kissed my hand, and the ambassadors paid me their respects. And after that, he stood there for an hour, and everybody came there and gave their respect towards him, and all the ambassadors paid their respects towards Rasendal. Then back we went through the streets to the palace. I was in the carriage now, side by side with the Princess Flavia. Means when they were returning from the church towards palace, this time they were going through the streets, and they did not ride on the horse. They were on the carriage, and Princess Flavia sat with Rudolph side by side on the carriage. She turned to me. Now Princess Flavia turned towards Rasendal, who was in the get-up of King Rudolph. Do you know Rudolph? Said she. Now Princess Flavia addressed to Rudolph that, do you know, you look somehow different today. Means you are looking some different today from other days. The fact was not surprising, but the remark was disquieting. Means after getting the remark of Princess Flavia that you look somehow different today, Rasindal thought that the fact was not surprising for him. Means in reality, the fact was not surprising for him, because he was only playing the role of King Rudolph. He was not real king. But the remark was disquieting. Means he got this remark from Princess Flavia. Just because of that, this remark was disquieting for him. Disquieting means causing fear and worry for him, and just because of that he was feeling nervousness. I said, what was perfectly true, my dear princess. It must be because nothing in my life has affected me more than the reception I have been greeted with today. But Rasindal tried to handle the situation, and he replied to Princess Flavia, that whatever you said, it is perfectly true, because Before this time, I never got such kind of affection, such kind of reception and love of my people. So all that things were very surprising for me, whatever I got today, and that has affected me a lot. So just because of that, I am looking some different today. She smiled brightly, but in an instant grew grave and whispered, "Did you notice Michael?" Means after getting the reply of Rassendel as King Rudolf, she smiled. Princess Flavia smiled brightly, but in an instant means but in a moment again she became serious and she whispered. Whispered means she spoke in a very low manner. "Did you notice Michael?" Means have you noticed anything in Michael's behavior? "Yes," said I, adding, "he was not enjoying himself." Now Rassendel said to Princess that yes, I saw him and he was not enjoying himself today. "Do be careful," she went on. "You don't, indeed you don't keep enough watch on him, you know." Now Princess Flavia said to Rudolf, who was in reality Rassendel, that you should be careful towards Black Michael. And she carried that you don't means you are not careful towards him. But in fact, you should be, and you should keep watch on him. And you know, means Black Michael is not such a person on which we can believe. "I know," said I, "that he wants what I have got." Now, Rassendel replied to Princess that I know what Black Michael wants, and I what I have got means whatever I got today. I know that Black Michael did not want that, and I know that Black Michael did not want my coronation, and he did not want to see me as a king. Bang, bang, blare, blare, we were at the palace. Now, finally, after coronation, King Rudolf means Rassendel and Princess Flavia reached at their palace. Guns were firing and trumpets blowing, and guns were fired and trumpets were blew in their honor, in their welcome. Rows of attendants stood waiting, and all the attendants were standing at the gate of the palace. I handed the princess up the broad marble staircase. Means Rassendel took princess to upside on the broad marble staircase. Then I took formal position as a crowned king of the royal palace and wondered what the king of Ruritania was doing. And after that, Rassendel took the formal position as a crowned king because he was in the role of King Rudolph. So he took a formal position as a crowned king of the royal palace and wondered means he was wondering that what the real king of Ruritania was doing means what the real king of Ruritania must be doing at that time. So it is an interesting story and I hope you clearly understood the story, but it is only a part of the story and complete story is in a book form and the book name is The Prisoner of Zenda. In that book it is mentioned that what happened next after that coronation ceremony. So for getting that results you should must read the book The Prisoner of Zenda, and a little description is given here at the end of that story. So I am going to read. The excitement heats up as Black Michael kidnaps the real king and Rassendel is forced to keep up the pretense for longer than he expected to. So the excitement means after coronation ceremony, the excitement increases when Black Michael kidnaps the real king, King Rudolf, and Rassendel is forced, and in that condition, Rassendel is forced to stay there at the palace for more time, for longer time than he expected. The story of how he rescues Rudolf and saves the throne of Ruritania from Michael forms the story of the prisoner of Zenda. How Rasendal rescues Rudolf and how he saves the throne of Ruritania. Full story you will get in the book The Prisoner of Zenda, so you must read that book. Thanks for watching my video, and give your likes and comments and share with your friends.